So today we are making a souffle sponge roll with the flavor of Earl Grey. Now, traditionally making this style of Swiss roll sponge, you would take eggs and then they would be separated into the egg yolks and the egg whites, whipped with the sugar to create a nice fluffy leavening component to our sponge, and then incorporated with the flour. But today, of course, we're going to make it completely eggless and plant-based, so let's get into it. So to get started, we're going to start with our vegan egg yolk component. So I've already measured out my water for egg yolk, and to that we're going to be adding our ingredients. So for the egg yolk component, we're using the panis egg, which is traditionally used as a whole egg replacer. However, you can use it for egg yolks as well. It's going to have all the same functions that we're looking for. It's going to create a nice rich texture and emulsify our ingredients, and it also has the foaming abilities as well. So we're going to add that to our water. And because our egg yolk powder, or our panis egg in this case, does not contain any colorant, we're going to be adding a small amount of turmeric just to kind of give it that egg yellow or egg yolk yellow color. And we have a little bit of vegetable oil for the fat component. And I just like to use my hand beaters and just give that a good mix until it's nicely incorporated. Okay, so now that's mixed up, I'm just going to set that aside. So if you're vegan egg white, you want to take a large bowl or a stand mixer bowl. Just make sure that it's nice and clean. And to that, we're going to be adding our water. And then we have our sugar and our powders. So my sugar component, and then I'm using the potato protein 300 for the egg white replacement. So I'm just going to put that powder in with the sugar. That's just going to help it disperse nicely. And we want a stabilizing agent. So today I'm using the xanthan gum, and that's going to help hold onto the foam once we create it in the whipping process. And just give those powders a good mix just to start dispersing everything and into our water. Now, when using potato protein 300, it does require you to use water that has a pH of 7. But what I find generally is adding a small pinch of bicarb soda is going to assist in activating the functions of the potato protein. So I like to just add a small pinch into my water and the powders. And that's going to get it started all foaming. But if you do find your potato protein is not foaming, it's probably because you just need a little bit of bicarb soda. All right, let's get this onto our mixer. I'm just going to start off on a slow speed first, just to get everything incorporated. So I'm just going to run it on the speed 2, just for about a minute or so, just to start dissolving the powder. So it's been about a minute. I'm going to increase my speed to like a medium speed, like a medium high speed. And we're going to continue whipping this until we get a nice stiff peak. So while our vegan egg whites are whipping up, we can start preparing the flavoring agent for our sponge. So because this is an Earl Grey souffle sponge today, I'm using some Earl Grey tea. Now you could use just a loose leaf Earl Grey tea. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to find, so I'm just using these tea bags, and I'm going to empty a few of them into my spice grinder. So I just want to open up the bags into my spice grinder. And I'm just using a micro scale to measure out how much I need, which should probably be these 3 tea bags worth. I'm going to add my tea, my Earl Grey tea, to my all-purpose flour, along with a very small portion of baking powder and a little bit of salt. And I'm just going to whisk all of that together and just set that aside. So let's take a look at our vegan egg white. We're currently at sort of like a soft peak stage, which is great. So I'm gonna get this back onto my mixer and increase the speed a little bit. We just don't want to use the full speed, but you can go the notch just below it. And I'm going to continue whipping this until the stiff peak. So my vegan egg whites are almost done. We're going to finish off the yolk portion. So this has been sitting for about 10 minutes or so. We're going to add our sugar measurement A and beat this on a low speed until it's kind of thick. It's sort of like a soft peak stage. So we have this lovely consistency to our vegan egg yolk. It's nice and thick and it would have about doubled in size. So let's take a look at our vegan egg white. It's looking lovely and thick. Should be able to put it over your head. So that's perfect. Now I'm going to grab myself a large bowl. I find the incorporation process is much easier if you use a big bowl as opposed to these tall ones. Let's get all that lovely meringue in our bowl. Now with our vegan egg yolk, I like to take a little bit of the meringue and just mix it through, just to loosen it up a little bit. All right, now we're going to add all of that into our meringue. Using the panis egg in the egg yolk is really going to help give a lot of structure to our souffle sponge and really help to hold all of that air as opposed to just using the potato protein on its own. So we're just folding that through. Now we're going to start adding our flour mixture and I'm going to sift in about 1/3 at a time. And just fold through. We don't want to lose too much of that air. You can smell that aroma from the tea as well, the bergamot from the Earl Grey. So I'm just scraping underneath the bowl and then folding that foam over. Scraping under the bowl and folding over. You can cut through the center. So we're just being very gentle. Once it's almost all incorporated, we're going to continue on with the next third. Once it's all incorporated, I like to use my whisk and just do a few folds with the whisk. Maybe like 5 or 6, just to make sure that there's no big lumps of flour. All right, that looks good. So I've just got myself a large sheet pan and I've just flipped it over, or you can just use a nice large tray. And I have myself a silicone mat here. And I'm just going to spritz it just with a little bit of oil. Now we're going to take 1/4 of the batter that we just prepared. So now I'm going to spread this out, just leaving a bit of a edge around. So just spread it out. It's going to be really nice and thin, but this is going to help create a nice base for our sponge. Okay, so now you can see we've got a nice base and I've left a little bit of an edge around. So I have here a piping bag and I've just fitted it with an 18cm round tip nozzle. And we're going to fill this up with our remaining sponge batter. But you don't want to overfill your bag, so we can always fill it up again. And we want to try and make sure that we don't have too many large air pockets. So I'm probably putting about half of that remaining batter in here. Just going to give that a bit of a shake, just make sure you don't have any large air pockets. I'm just going to twist the bag so we have some good pressure. And we're going to create a really lovely design with our sponge. So we have a bit of a texture to it. So we're gonna go on an angle with our sponge, and I like to kind of use my finger as a guide. And we're going to pipe on an angle. And I'm piping it quite close together as well. Now you can also use this same batter to make lady fingers for tiramisu, lots of different applications, or make charlotte cakes. If you've just got a tiny bit left in the bag, I'd recommend for you to just squeeze that out and then just fill it up again. Just so we don't have a big air pocket. So I'm just going to give a little tap underneath. I just want to make sure that there's no really large air bubbles. I'm going to dust it with a little bit of confectioner's sugar. So now we are ready to pop this into our preheated oven. So my oven's preheated, we're going to get this going in. Now we want to ensure that we don't over bake it. So we want to take it out before we really see too much color at all. So I'm going to get this going in now from anywhere between 8 and about 15 minutes. So I had my sponge in for about 11 minutes and I can see that it's just started to color on the edges. So I'm just going to open my oven door and just leave it open, yeah, just like a crack. I'm going to let it cool in my oven slowly for 30 minutes and then take it out to completely cool. So my sponge has been cooling slowly in the oven for about 30 minutes. We're going to take it out now. I'm going to grab myself a piece of baking paper and just pop it over the top of my sponge along with a cooling rack. And we are going to flip this guy over. And just carefully peel the backing off. Now I'm just going to grab myself a tea towel and just cover the sponge with the tea towel, just so it doesn't dry out too much, because we do want to make sure that when we roll it, it's not going to crack too much. So I'm just going to set that aside for probably about another 30 minutes until it's completely cooled down.